Wow, if I would dream, probably this would be it. Do ya?
Oh my dear. Oh, look at you.
We finally meet the mastermind of this operation, the one and only Fairy Godmother, who in this movie embodies the archetype of the tyrant. But we'll talk more about this later. The Fairy Godmother sets herself up as the ultimate savior, essential and caring, which is how tyrants build trust and take control, by the way. She then claims to know exactly what princesses need for happiness, pushing her one-size-fits-all solutions that often focus on material gains and changing someone's appearance. Hey! Huh! Huh! Ha! 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 Thank God she stopped it. Jesus, this is a hot mess. If Fiona wouldn't have gone already through this journey of self-acceptance and established her identity, the Fairy Godmother's trick would have easily worked on her. But because together with Shrek she learned to love her ogre side, now she's able to put a stop to this chaos. This is why a relationship can make you complete. Because one's identity is an individual responsibility. It's meant to be shared with other people, yes, but not constructed by others.
I really don't need all this.
How dare she? Pay attention here. Once she doesn't accept their help in the way they give it, they don't like her anymore. This is called conditional acceptance, and it shows how society often supports individuals only as long as they conform to expected norms and behavior. When Fiona chooses to reject the prescribed help, which is really just manipulation in disguise, she's also rejecting the roles and expectations forced upon her, which leads to disapproval from the others, because now she's not doing what she's supposed to do. Take it from me. Rejection doesn't mean you're failing or that you're undesirable. Oftentimes, rejection is redirection, meaning you're not supposed to be there at all. And that might be a blessing in disguise.
Oh, you got a puppy? Oh, I got my room with shampoo.
Oh,
I mean, you have a lot of hair, so...
Godmother? Furniture? I'd like you to meet my husband, Shrek.
Your husband? What? What did you say? When did this happen?
Shrek is the one
Don't
who
have a heart
rescued
attack.
me.
But that can't be right. Oh, great. More relatives.
When the Fairy Godmother says,
But that can't be right.
it makes Shrek insecure because this quickly taps into one of his core fears and struggles throughout the series. The fear of rejection and not being accepted for who he is. And on top of that, he feels rejected from having a place in Fiona's life as well. From Shrek's perspective, he wasn't even given a chance here. His rejection was not based on any personal flaw or action on his part, but purely on his identity as an ogre. Which of course triggers his usual defense mechanism, sarcasm.
Just trying to help.
Is
Good,
she?
She can help us pack. Get your coat, dear. We're leaving.
What?
Leaving?
Again?
When did you decide this?
Shortly after her arrival.
Not only does Shrek use sarcasm as a defense mechanism, but he also uses withdrawal because he has all of a sudden decided to leave now. This is the second time that he makes decision for this couple under distress, so I'd personally love for Fiona to address this with him. However, that would mean for her to also address the fact she didn't really validate his fears and concerns from the beginning. The reality is that Shrek's responses are very much tied to the initial invalidation of his feelings. Granted, he wasn't great at expressing them, but remember that when people go through emotional distress, communication becomes much harder, and it's great for the other partner to make space for those feelings and facilitate that conversation. That's why I always find it important for couples to understand there are two main roles in a relationship: venter and supporter. When the venter brings up an issue, it is forbidden for the supporter to respond to it with another issue of their own. If one vents, the other needs to support, and vice versa. I have a video on my page explaining exactly conflict management, so you can go check it out if you want.
Look, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I need to go anyway. But remember, dear, if you should ever need me, happiness is just a teardrop away.
I don't trust you.
But we've got all the happiness we need. Happy, happy, happy.
See, the Fairy Godmother gives the card almost implying that Fiona isn't happy. So of course Shrek snaps and responds with the
But we've got all the happiness we need.
It's like his place in Fiona's life is once again questioned, yet nobody took the time to know him. The real problem here is the fact that he sees the Fairy Godmother as manipulative, while Fiona considers she just wants to help. I think this is an example of situational identity, when people revert to previous roles based on context and environment. It's like when you're visiting your family and you might find yourself speaking with an accent or slipping into some old habit. Fiona has been conditioned from the moment she was born to fit the role of a princess. Because she's surrounded by familiar cues, she automatically reverts to these patterns, but by doing so, she experiences cognitive dissonance because she's trying to navigate the conflict between her identities as Shrek partner and the princess. As she interacts with figures like the Fairy Godmother, who represent her traditional upbringing, she might mistakenly see manipulative tactics as genuine help. This goes to show how difficult it is to hold on to personal changes and growth when you're back in a familiar setting that pulls you towards certain roles.
Very nice, Shrek.
What? I told you coming here was a bad idea.
You could have at least tried to get along with my father.
No, somehow, I don't think I was gonna get Daddy's blessing, even if I did want it.
Okay, I find Fiona's comment very invalidating and escalating further the issue. Shrek did try to get along with her father, and not acknowledging that should infuriate anyone, especially because Harold deeply insulted Shrek at the table. Shrek could express himself more clearly here, but I think he's experiencing too much emotional distress for that. And this is a conversation I have very often with couples. Often the question is, why didn't he or she just say blank? And the answer very often is because people are not perfect. If they're emotionally overwhelmed, it is absurd to request a high level of performance when it comes to communication, because it's impossible. It's like he's surrounded by people who consider him not good enough, and his wife seems to agree from his perspective. If we don't spend time to acknowledge our partner's efforts, it will make them feel misunderstood and alone, making them cooperate even less. Remember that you as a couple are supposed to act like a team, but right now it feels like Shrek is fighting against the kingdom of far, far away, including Fiona.
Well, do you think it might be nice if somebody asked me what I wanted?
Sure. Do you want me to pack for you?
Fiona's question triggers feelings of injustice in Shrek, as he also was never asked what he wanted. Even if he said he doesn't want to come here from the very beginning, his desire was overlooked, so that's why he can't empathize at the moment with her, because it feels like a double standard. This is a moment where they share frustration because both of them feel like their desires and opinions are overlooked. His response is obviously passive-aggressive, there's no mistake about that, but it has a hint of genius if you ask me. Because he feels like his desires are overlooked, he phrases the question by encapsulating his own desire to leave while simultaneously addressing Fiona's expressed need for someone to ask her what she wants. A dick move, but then again, I feel like he's not left with many options here.